Everyone, I hope you're all well. Okay, then, I'm going to do two videos today. I'm going to do a short one on how Parliament passes laws, and then I'm going to do another one on parliamentary committees, which is really, really important. Um, as a quick recap from the last time we spoke, or I spoke, we were doing the stuff on the powers and functions of the House of Commons and Lords, and you had to do that PowerPoint over the functions of Parliament. If you were to get an exam question on the lines of evaluate how effective Parliament is at doing its job, or Parliament is not fit for purpose, or some kind of general question about Parliament being good or bad, then basically you'd have to. What I would do, I'd focus on its main kind of things it's supposed to do and evaluate those. So you do one paragraph stroke theme, wouldn't you, on something like scrutinising the executive. You do another theme stroke paragraph on representing people, and you do another theme stroke paragraph on passing legislation or dealing with legislation, something like that. And you'd have to decide to begin with, is Parliament good or bad at doing those things, and focus on those. So what that PowerPoint should have done is give me the good bones as such for an essay. What we'll be doing over this week and after Easter, I suppose, looking a bit more detail at some of those themes about what Parliament is supposed to do. I mean, I suppose we've already covered the one about Parliament passing, representing people, haven't we? We've done about the ethnic mix and gender mix and stuff. Okay, so today's mainly about passing laws. Okay, so you should have done as well from last time this thing about Lords versus Commons. How's the Lords becoming more assertive? How do Commons maintain supremacy? I can't remember when I've gone over that or not on a previous video. I suppose I could listen to them all back again, but I can't face doing that. So just very, very quickly, because this does fit into lawmaking. The House of Lords, you could say, has become more assertive, especially since you had the coalition in 2010, because things like the Salisbury Convention. Remember, the Salisbury Convention says what's in the government's manifesto, the House of Lords can't kind of destroy, essentially. Well, following the 2010 coalition, the House of Lords went, well, was this in the government's manifesto? It was in the Liberal Democrat one, but the Liberal Democrat didn't win the election. Or, oh, this was in the Conservative manifesto, but actually it wasn't in, well, the Conservatives didn't actually win the election. And so the House of Lords did become a bit more assertive during the coalition years. And they did defeat the government on a number of issues. They, for example, had a big attack on some of the welfare proposals and changes which the Cameron government tried to introduce. And in fact, a quick search on Google, you type in Cameron and the Lords over welfare, it'll come up with some of the examples of the Lords causing all sorts of problems. Another issue why the Lords is a bit hard to control for the government's point of view is the fact it doesn't have a majority in the House of Lords. Both Labour and the Conservative governments have found difficulties with dealing with the House of Lords. And so, again, that allows the House of Lords to be more assertive. And since they got rid of those hereditary peers, or all but 90 odd of them, the House of Lords have felt to be more legitimate. Because most have been appointed by a Prime Minister, i.e. an elected politician, they do feel, and if perhaps you might put doubt on this claim, but they do feel more legitimate and therefore more willing to act against the government. In terms of how the Commons maintains its supremacy, well, ultimately, if it's in a manifesto, the House of Lords have got very few powers to actually destroy it. All finance bills have to start in the House of Commons and they can't be blocked by the House of Lords. So the government don't feel like the budget or anything like that being blocked by the House of Lords. And ultimately, the House of Commons can act against the House of Lords and ignore them. They can invoke something called the Parliament Act, which basically says, that's very interesting, Lords, now go away and do something else. The House of Commons wins the day. And also the amount of time which they are limited with can limit legislation is also affected as well. What you often get in reality, though, is that the House of Lords will add in amendments to legislation and stuff. The government know they've only got a set period of time to get something through, and so very often they'll do deals and compromises with the House of Lords. So unless it's something really fundamental which the government do not want to compromise, in which case they can invoke the Parliament Act, in reality, day-to-day politics and stuff, there often are little deals done with members of the House of Lords. The government will accept certain amendments sometimes, and the House of Lords will accept what the government does on certain things. So in reality, there's a lot more compromise that actually does take place. But the House of Lords can be a problem for governments. And even those with big majorities in the House of Commons, like the Blair government, for example, have come unstuck in the House of Lords. And I imagine the same will happen to the current Boris government as well at some point. Okay then, so the main focus today then is how does Parliament pass laws? So obviously it's a legislature. Legis is the Latin word for law and lawmaking. So Parliament is the supreme lawmaking body in the UK. Parliament is obviously supreme. It can make and break any law it wishes to. It can repeal previous laws. For example, the Repeal Act, which kind of basically said, we've got rid of most of the stuff to do with the European Union. Parliament can make laws on anything it wishes to as well. So in terms of legislating, Parliament is really important. Now, you're never going to be asked in the exam explain how a law goes through Parliament, but you do need to know roughly what the process is, because if you're trying to evaluate how good Parliament is as a legislature, you kind of need to know where things fit in and why you might get problems and difficulties passing laws through. So, with that in mind, there's a little video which I will send you on email. It's from the Parliament site. It's like a little cartoon thing which explains how a law goes through Parliament. If you do law, by the way, I think Colin and Alex often show this to the law students. And then there's a blank page in your booklet. I want you to draw a diagram which shows you a law going through Parliament. Obviously you'll do it much neater than mine, but it should look something, I'm not sure you can see that, something like that. So you basically have green paper, white paper at the top, House of Commons, House of Lords, and then the Queen at the bottom, and the different stages. Just be aware, in the UK, they tend to go through one chamber and then the other chamber. When we look at the US Congress next year, they'll tend to go through more concurrently. The other thing to notice is that a law can start in the House of Lords. It does not have to start in the House of Commons. Okay, so they're just two things to note. The other things to note as well is that most laws in the UK are introduced by the government. The government has the most seats in the House of Commons, and so most laws which get passed basically do so thanks to with the government. The government's written most of them basically. We will have a look probably on Thursday at backbenchers and backbench laws that try to go through Parliament. The other thing to notice is that the government has a lot of control over this. The person or the individual that decides the timetable for Parliament is really significant, because he can decide, or she can decide, how long a bill will be discussed for, how long the debates will take place, etc., etc. And they can also decide the order of things to go through Parliament. So things which they don't want, they'll put at the end in the hope that it doesn't pass. Now, the person who's in charge of that, you would think would be the Speaker of the House of Commons or someone independent. It isn't. It's a government minister. It's the leader of the House of Commons, the leader of the House. He sits in the cabinet, and he, along with the Chief Whip and the Prime Minister, kind of decide, what legislation they want to get through, how long it should be debated for, etc., etc. Currently, that person is Jacob Rees-Mogg. Okay, so the government has a lot of control over this process. And when we look at backbenchers and their private members' bills, again, we'll have a chat about how important a parliament is at legislating, how good it is. You could argue, because if compared to the US Congress, which takes forever to pass a law and usually it gets rewritten from what was introduced, you might say that was a better legislature because it gets kind of scrutinised better than the House of Commons does, where things tend to go through quite quickly if the government's got a nice majority. Anyway, so that's for another time. So if you do the diagram, okay, then using the Edexcel textbook, and I wrote it down, it's on page 173, it talks about or explains how there's 4 different types of law. So again, just briefly, just say what the 4 types of law are. You can probably do it at the bottom of the diagram or something like that. So if you could do that for me, that would be great. And then probably in about half an hour's time, I will then talk through parliamentary committees. Okay.